Hello students, in this part of video we are going to see the explanation of chapters Should Wizard Hit Mommy. So let's start with the text. In the evening and for Saturday naps like today's, Jack told his daughter Jo a story out of his head. This custom began when she was two was itself now nearly 2 years old, and his head felt empty. So every evening on Saturday afternoon naps, Jack used to tell his daughter a bedtime story. This habit started when Jo was 2 years old, and now that Jo was 4 years old. Jack did not have any creative ideas of the stories now, because most of the stories that he used to tell Jo revolved around the same plot. Each new story was a slight variation of a basic tale. A small creature, usually named Roger, Roger Fish, Roger Squirrel, Roger Chimpuck, had some problem and went with it to solve. The wise old owl. The owl told him to go to the wizard, and the wizard performed a magic spell that solved the problem, demanding in payment a number of pennies greater than the number that Roger creature had, but in the same breath directing the animal to place where the extra pennies could be found. So here in this paragraph, pennies means a small amount of money, right? So that is called pennies. So let's see what the paragraph says. So in every story, Roger used to be a different animal with some kind of a problem, and most of the stories that he used to tell Jo revolved around the same plot, as I told you, concerning an animal named Roger. So every time he used to give him a different name, like Roger Fish, Roger Squirrel, Roger Chimpuck. So then Roger would go to the and this Roger, in every story he used to face a problem with some kind of problem, and then Roger would go to this wise owl to take help, who would in turn tell him to go to the wizard. Then Roger would make his problem to the wizard, who would help him in exchange for some pennies, means some money, mostly a bit more than what Roger had with him. And after helping him, the wizard would ask him to go to the certain place. Let's see. The Roger was so happy he played many games with other creatures and went home to his mother just in time to hear the train whistle that brought his daddy home from Boston. Jack described their supper and the story was over. So as a wizard guided him, or he told him to go to a certain place to fetch some more pennies, and Roger would do exactly like that. Then after paying the wizard, Roger would go back, and with all the animals, they would start playing, right? He would be very happy, and later he would return home just in time to wait for his father, who would be returning from Boston by train. So here Jack also described their supper, their dinner, and the story was over. So that usually he used to tell to his daughter Jo. Next, let's see what happened next. Working his way through this game was especially fatiguing on Saturdays, because Jo never fell asleep in naps anymore, and knowing this made the ride seem futile. The little girl, not so little anymore, the bumps her feet made under the covers were halfway down the bed, their big double bed that they let her be in for naps, and when she was sick had at last arranged herself. So let's see in this paragraph. Fatiguing means that is a cause when someone feel exhausted, tired. So that is called fatiguing. One more word is the right. right is there. So right means a social custom or a practice. Next is futile. Futile means pointless. And let's see now what the paragraph says. So here when Jack told him what was the dinner and all that, so that time the story used to be over. Now Jack had now started getting tired to his daily routine because he had run out of his ideas for the stories. Also, Joe did not sleep listening to the story anymore. He had started feeling that this practice of storytelling was just a waste of time and there was no point of doing it. So he also noticed that Joe had started growing big and that her legs now stretched halfway down the bed when she snuggled in for her stories. So with all the light coming in from the window over her face, she won't be sleeping, and her face that was deep in pillow, Jack knew that she won't be sleeping soon. Now when the light was coming from the window over her face, the father was getting that, and he was realizing, he was noting that Jack she won't be sleeping soon. And Bobby, her baby brother, who was 2 years old, was already sleeping with his bottle in his mouth. Then when Jack asked Joe that who should this story be about that day, because he just wanted to create his interest there. So let's see what happened. Roger dash dash. Joe squeezed her eyes shut and smiled, bethinking she was thinking. Her eyes opened, her mother's blue. Skunk, she said firmly. A new animal. They must talk about skunks at nursery school. Having a fresh hero momentarily stirred Jack Joe's creative enthusiasm. All right, he said. So when Jack asked Joe that what about whom she wanted to listen the story, so instantly Joe replied that she wanted to listen a story about a skunk. And Jack then thought that she must have heard about this animal in the nursery school and also got enthusiastic as he had a new hero for this story. So all right, he said. So he agreed that he will tell her a story with the hero Roger Skunk. Once upon a time in the deep dark woods, there was a tiny little creature by the name Roger Skunk, and he smelled very bad. Yes, Joe said, he smelled so bad that none of other little woodland creatures would play with him. Joe looked at him solemnly. She hadn't foreseen this. So what happened here? Woodland, what is there? One woodland is there. So woodland means which is land covered with trees, means it's a type of forest. And solemnly means with the deep sincerity. So when the father started, so the story started with Roger Skunk living in the forest. Jack said that Roger smelled bad. None of other animals in the forest liked to play with him. All the other animals would start running away whenever he would go out to play. At this moment, Jack was recollecting about certain humiliation that he had faced during his childhood for being foul smelling. Whenever he would go out to play, Jack continued with just remembering certain humiliation on his own childhood. All of the other tiny animals would cry, "Oh, here comes Roger's stinky skunk," and they would run away, and Roger Skunk would stand there all alone, and two little round tears would fall from his eyes. So, while he was recollecting about the certain humiliation that he had faced during his childhood for being foul smell, then Joe asked whether Roger would see the wise owl. Jack was sitting beside her and noticing that there were two, the small tears were there. The corners of Joe's mouth drooped down and her lower lips bent forward as he traced with a forefinger along the side of her nose the course of one of the Roger skunk's tear. Won't he see the owl? She asked in a high and faintly roughened voice. Sitting on the bed beside her, Jack felt the covers tug as her legs twitched tensely. So here tensely means which is unable to relax because of nervousness or anxiety or stimulus, and stinky means having a strong or unpleasant smell, right? Let's see what the paragraph says. So when the father was feeling that his humiliation in his school and all that, so there then Joe asked whether Roger would see the wise owl. Jack was sitting beside her and noticed that Joe was getting anxious with the story and she was feeling happy. She was feeling pleased with that. He did not want to hurry and wanted to make the story more intense as he wanted to convey a message through it. So he was pleased with this moment. He was telling her something true, something she must know, and had no wish to hurry on. But downstairs a chair scraped as he realized he must get down to help Claire paint the living room woodwork. Well, he walked along very sadly and came to a very big tree, and in the tip top of the tree was an enormous wise old owl. So because the father it is actually he was behaving like the good parents, and he wanted to give a message through her story, but that time at the downstairs a chair scraped and he realized that he must go down to help her wife. Now why? Because the wife was painting the furniture. So suddenly Jack heard that voice downstairs of a chair which was being pulled, and he realized that he must go down to help his wife in painting the living room, or because she was painting there in the living room, but had to continue with the story as Joe had not slept yet. So Jack continued that Roger Skunk was sad, and as he walked he came across a tree where he saw the wild old owl. "Good, Mr. Owl," Roger Skunk said. "All the other little animals run away from me because I smell so bad." "So you do," the owl said. "Very, very bad. What can I do?" Roger Skunk said. He cried very hard. "The wizard, the wizard," Joe shouted, "and sit right up." And a little golden book spilled from the bed. So at that time what happened, when he was thinking to go to help his wife, so but he wanted to continue with the story also because the daughter was not still asleep. So he continued with that, and he told that he went there. He came across a tree where he saw a wise owl. The skunk then shared his problem with the wise owl, and Owl started thinking of how he could help the little skunk. Then Joe shouted enthusiastically that the wise old this old owl would ask him to go to the wizard, and she had known about the basic plot of the story her dad used to tell her, so that's why she shouted with that. Now he should go there. Now Jack got a bit irritated and scolded her and asked her what. Let's see. "Now Joe, Daddy is telling story. Do you want to tell Daddy the story?" "No, you me." "Then lie down and be sleepy." Her head relapsed onto the pillow and she said, "Out of your head." Well, the owl thought and thought. At last he said, "Why don't you go to see the wizard, Daddy? What are the magic spell reals?" This was a new phase just this last month, a reality phase. Now, when Jo started poking her nose in the story, so Jack was not feeling very happy that time, and Jo denied. Jack got irritated a bit, and he scolded her that if she wanted to tell the story by herself, then Jo denied that, and Jack asked her to lie down peacefully and continue listening to the story. So Jo told Jack to tell the story out of his head. Then Jack continued with the story that the owl told Roger to go to see the wizard for his problem. Then what happened? Then Jo again interrupted and asked if the magic spells that the wizards used were real. When Jo asked this question, Jack realized that Jo was coming into the reality phase and had. So then the father realized that Jo was coming into the reality phase and had started asking questions about the things her parents used to tell her. When he told her spiders eat bugs, she turned to her mother and asked, "Do they really?" And when Claire told her God was in the sky and all about them, she turned to her father and insisted with a sly yet eager smile, "Is he really?" "They are real in stories," Jack answered curtly. She had made him miss a beat in the narrative. Now, when he felt that she is asking these questions, so he noticed that she no longer believed her parents blindly and was curious about everything that was told to her. And Jo repeated her questions, to which Jack replied that the spells were real in the stories. So he continued with the story that the skunk went through the way the wise owl had asked him to go and reached the White House. And then what happened? Next, see.